Welcome to The Table, a podcast where leaders pull up a chair and tell the real story, how they got there and how they stayed there. I'm your host, Jeanette Hernandez. So pull up a seat because this is The Table. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us today at The Table. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Yeah, great to be here, Jeanette.
So, you've had a long career. I won't age you or date you like I would do to myself. But how did you get started in insurance, and kind of what's been your career journey?
So, I've had I guess I had a very different way of getting into insurance. So, I went to school in Boston, where I am today, and I had an ROTC scholarship. So, I left college as an officer in the Army, went out and I became an infantry officer in the 10th Mountain Division. And
Amazing.
so I got to serve leading some really, really incredible people. But I think more impactful for my life, I got to serve under some incredible leaders
Yes.
in the very, very early part of my career. And, as my time in the Army was kind of finishing up, I was kind of counting up the days and saying, how many days have I slept on the ground versus in a bed? And the number was the opposite of what you thought it would be.
Right.
And there was a thought there of like, wow, I'd really like to try something a little bit different. And so I kind of reset my career and went back to business school and really said, I need to, learn the business skills of
Mm-hmm.
being in business, what's important in business, and then go from there. From there, I kind of said, all right, well, where's an opportunity for me? And I started targeting like Fortune 500 companies because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to expose myself to a number of different experiences before I picked one thing and just, drove at it for the rest of, the next 20 years, right? I
Yes.
was lucky enough to land at Liberty Mutual. I was in what they called a corporate development program. I got to rotate around a bunch of different departments for the first couple of years of my career and experience like all the different pieces of insurance. So a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
underwriting, a little bit of loss prevention, a little bit of finance. And when I finished that, I found myself in an underwriting role because I was really excited about it. I liked the analytics, I liked the risk selection piece, and I said, "Yeah, this is cool." It kind of hits on all the things I did in business school, and I did that for a couple years, and I was lucky enough, that a management role opened up. I said, "Yeah, I'd like to manage a team," and so I ended up managing a team of underwriters. Did some really cool stuff there, and, did that for a little bit of time. And I had a friend in another part of the business and said, "Hey, we've got this thing in personal claims. Would you be interested?" And I said, "I don't know. What is it?"
You have no
And
idea what you were signing up for, right?
yeah, exactly. I had no idea. And I said, "Hey, what is it?" And he said, "Well, this is, you're doing process improvement and there's like metrics and there's, all this data and it's claims." And I was like, huh, I'm like, all right. I said, maybe I'll go, interview for it and see what I can learn about it.
Yeah.
Went through the interview process and I walked away from it going, wow, that sounds really interesting. I hope I get it. And so I got it. I started out like individual contributor, doing a bunch of process improvement stuff. And then that kind of built, right? It was something that it was really exciting for me, blending a lot of things that I liked. And I did small process improvement projects and then bigger and bigger. And I was managing a team. And then, a couple years in, they said, "Hey, do you want to go over to the auto team?" I was on the homeowners team at the time. "And do you want to do some process improvement stuff over there?" And I said, huh, sounds
They were
interesting.
moving you everywhere.
Yeah. And again, it was like, it was interesting to me. Right. And so I said, all right, let's go do that. I did that for a couple years. And again, like did a bunch of different projects, did a Guidewire implementation. And then they said, "Hey, can you come back and, lead the home process improvement team?" And so I said, okay, yeah, sure. Happy to do it. Came back to the home team, did some bigger projects with the home team, improving process, countrywide stuff. And I got, a couple years deep into that. And I was talking with, one of my mentors who was there at the company at the time. And he asked me, he said, "Andrew, what do you want to do next?" And I said to him, I said, when I was in the Army, I loved leading big groups of people. That was
Mhm.
exciting for me. And, I said to him, I said, "The next thing I'd like to do is I'd love to lead, one of the field teams, if I was lucky enough to do that and lead claim adjusters and, do that type of work." And he looked at me very seriously and said, "Well, have you told anybody about this?" I said,
Hmm.
"Well, I'm telling you." And he said, "You might want to talk to your boss and let your boss
Yeah.
know that you might be interested in doing this." And so I said, "Okay." I'm like, I'll go tell him." And so I, next one-on-one with my boss, I walked in there and said, "Hey, kind of thinking of this. I was talking to somebody else." And, as luck would have it, we did a big reorg and I got the opportunity to move from a home office job into a field job.
And
And I
wow,
was
what a
leading,
nugget he gave you because
oh,
most people don't ask. Most people just sit and wait. And if had he not said that, your trajectory of your career could have been so different.
totally. And it's those things. It goes back to, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
so many of us, like, so much of the time, we just don't say anything.
Yes.
Um, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, but it was really fortuitous. I was super lucky that the timing just worked out just right. And I landed in a job leading, several hundred people, and did that for a little bit. Got, my counterpart who was managing the other half of the company, she moved on to an amazing international job. And they said, "Okay, here you go. Now go manage the whole country." Right. So I did that for a little bit. And then we reorged again, found myself leading kind of kind of a cross brand. So we had Liberty and Safeco. So I was leading both
Mhm. Oh,
brands,
uh-huh. Yeah.
but had our desk operation, our liability operation, our water mitigation group, and did that for a couple 3 years. And then found myself at a place where I really loved what I was doing. Had done it for a while, and I out of the blue, recruiter called me and said, "Hey, we've got this job, and it's a little bit of a smaller team, but it's a lot broader responsibility." And so I said, "That sounds really interesting." And so I went and I interviewed, and sure enough, it was I was kind of laser focused on desk and liability and these things, and then it went to a mile wide of all
Mhm.
these different things and claims. And I
Yeah.
said, "Wow, like, that sounds really exciting." And so I made the jump after being at Liberty for 15 years over to Homesite, um, and started leading a big chunk of their claims operation.
And that's
And
scary for people because when you have a combination of being incredibly prepared, meaning you did the work when the opportunity arose. You didn't just sit back and wait and say, "Hey, I'd like to do this. Now somebody tell me what I'm supposed to do to get there." You prepared so that when somebody knocked on the door, you could actually sit at the table and say, "Not only am I ready, but I've got the skill set to do it and to execute on it." And I don't know that everybody gets that as many times as you've had it.
well, it's funny. So, like, that, what you just described, when I was in business school, we had a guy come in and he was talking to one of our classes. And I wish I could remember his name. I wish I could remember what company he worked for, but let's just say he was wildly successful. And one of the people in my class asked him, said, "How did you get there? How did you get into this job?"
Mm.
And
Yep.
what he said has stuck with me for the rest of my career. He said, "I don't look at the next job that I want. I look 2 or 3 jobs down the road, and then I say, what skills don't I have that I need to get that job? And
Right.
then that informs, okay, then I need to do this job next." And, like, that
Correct.
type
Yeah.
of thinking has stayed with me my whole career. And so as these opportunities have come up, I have been thinking, like, a couple steps down the road, be like, well, oh, this is going to give me these skills. Let's go do it.
You bring up something interesting that just simply doesn't exist for current leaders, maybe starting out at the frontline level, like a manager who aspired to be a VP of claims. And that is many of the companies that used to have those, I'll call them the management or leadership programs where they let you go because they wanted to invest to keep you in the company. They really didn't care what division you went into.
Yeah.
They wanted to build leaders and similar type leaders. Those programs went away. And then from the technical perspective, we have so like, even auto claims, we've bifurcated things, right? We used to handle
Hmm.
claims start to finish. Now you can handle the car or the injury, but you can't really handle both. And so you don't get it takes much longer to get that experience that you're talking about so that when the opportunity comes up to lead or to be a great technician, you're still a little bit behind the 8 ball until you get your sea legs in the job that you're in.
Hmm.
How do you say to people that, you know, create your opportunity? Because while you did have opportunity brought to you, you created it yourself by investing in, like, what skills don't I have? And I don't think we take the time to look at ourselves to say, oh, in 10 years, I want to be here, or 2 years, or whatever your time frame is, and I'm missing these skills because we might be too focused on the job that we're doing. How do you recommend, aside from business school, maybe that someone does that today, the aspiring leaders that are trying to do that?
So I get this question a lot from my adjusters. Like, it's like, how do I progress?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I'll say to everybody is be great at your job,
Right.
right? Table stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Be great at the job you're in. And once you're great at the job you're in, that's going to open a million doors unto itself, right? And then you can start doing some of the extracurriculars, as I like to call them, to then build out other skills. Um, and so establishing a reputation as a person who's great at their job, people start to know who you are. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
right. There's Jeanette. Like, oh, she knows how, she's really good at this, right? And then as people were talking about Jeanette, then it's like, huh, maybe I want to have Jeanette on my team, or oh, this opportunity happened, let's do this. And so it all comes back to be great at the job you're in. That's going to open a ton of doors. When you get there, when you're great in the job that you're in, then you say to yourself, it's like, well, let's get curious,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's a
Where can I
great
look
word.
at? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hey, let's go look at I'm going to go look at the job boards inside of my company and see what's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm looking for a new job, but I'm looking for what else is out there. What else is interesting to me? And maybe that then sparks a comment with my boss to say, "Hey, I saw something in underwriting. It's really kind of they're doing some stuff over there and they're looking to hire this role. I don't think I want to go anywhere, but maybe could I do something with them on a project, or can I go do a sit along, or things like that?"
Right.
And it's like those types of interactions that I think create those opportunities for folks at that frontline level. But the foundation is be great at your current job first,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
then you're going to do those next things.
And I hear many leaders say that, be maybe in different ways, but be really good at what you do, because sometimes that effort that you put in every single day, you don't know who's noticing it. And that could be the person that's bringing you into the next opportunity. But if you just say, "Yeah, I kind of know my job," and collecting the paycheck, you're hurting yourself as well as the company if you're not curious. I love that word, curious, because if you're not curious in your own career, how do you expect others to be?
Right,
Right?
right.
They're not gonna inquire. There's 5,000 people in a company. They're not gonna come and go, "So, Andrew, you were lucky that somebody actually asked you, so what do you wanna do?" That's rare. But that's a great leader making more leaders. They know exactly what they saw something in you, and they're like, "I'm just gonna nudge them a little bit."
Yep, absolutely.
So, now that we're going in 2026, I can't believe how fast 2025 went by, but I see, at least me personally, I would say the industry change maybe every 10 years. Something
Mhm,
interesting, or that but then we
mhm.
could all kind of catch up. Now, and then I said it's maybe every 5 years. Now every year, especially as a chief claims officer, that job is not all about claims. Now you're having to understand climate change and how does that impact our cat seasons. Now you have to become an economist and understand how are tariffs going to hit, our property and our auto. There's so much to be abreast of, and so it's hard to maybe develop some of those skills because we're just our whole society's information overload. What are you doing in order to get the information that you need to be effective today? So there's skills you've done as a leader, but to be a great leader and lead, people look to you like, I don't know anything about this. Can't know everything, but you have to know a lot.
Yeah, you do. But at the same time, too, we're at a point in human history where all of the information in human history is available to us, you know, on this,
Correct.
right?
Right.
And, you know, I live in one of the worst commuting areas in the entire world.
Yes.
So I guess I benefit from a super long commute both ways. Um, and so for me, it's I listen to podcasts, right?
Mm,
I listen to
mhm,
AI podcasts. I listen to claims podcasts. I listen to financial podcasts, you know, and I'm using that time like it's very passive listening, but
mhm.
listening to what's going on and go, oh wow, that's a good tidbit. But boy, I should be doing a little bit more on that. And my dad, like this is something that my dad stuck with me, that sticks in kind of my head. My dad said, never stop learning. And
Ever. Yeah.
and that's always been a mantra of his. And every time, I mean, and throughout my entire career, he's like, what are you learning? What? what training have you taken? And, you know, probably someone in your 20s like, oh, Dad, I don't need any training. I know what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
I got it.
And now, I'm lucky enough. I get to go home at Thanksgiving, or Christmas coming up, and saying, "Hey, Dad, here's what I did. Here's some stuff that I learned. Hey, check this out. Right? What do you think about this?"
That's amazing.
And I think if you have that kind of discipline to be learning all of the time and be hungry for it,
Hmm.
right? You find different ways to jump around. It's, oh wow, I heard this on this, but boy, I want to learn a little more about this thing, and then your brain starts to connect those dots, right? And then you say, okay, well, that's me. But now how do I reach out to my peers and the folks on my team and talk about these ideas? Hey, have you heard something like this? What do you think? Like,
Right.
what are your perspectives? And then you start to fold that into, your ideas on that topic. But again, it's like, be curious, always be learning, be hungry for it. And if that's just part of the discipline of what you do, it's not easy, but it's not hard.
I think you bring up two of the most simplistic kind of basic things of leadership that we've all heard, but we forget, which is leaders never stop learning, ever, for multiple reasons, either for your job or for yourself, because you become a better leader when you can lead yourself first. And the curiosity part of what do I do with the learning? So there are people who are bookworms and they've read every leadership book in the world, or they stay abreast of things by reading. People still read the papers, albeit on a tablet. But if you don't share the information, then you just get smarter. And as a leader, you want the people around you to get smarter. So
Yep.
I think that those are both great points. And it's something so simple as we go into a new year, like a self check. What am I Either what do I have to do to become a better leader, or what am I not doing that I need to use that muscle memory that I do have? When you have young leaders come to you and say, "How do I get to your job?" Because there's a lot of career pathing that
Sure.
absolutely still exists. If you want to be a technician, you go this way. If you want to go management, you go that way. But that's just a picture. That's not a recipe, and it does take mentoring, but I think you hit on something earlier where you have to ask. You have to be driving the bus of your career. So if you feel like you're in a position, I started at State Farm 100 years ago. And at State Farm, if you wanted to move up literally, because it was generational, there was a child, a parent, and sometimes a grandparent, 3 generations working for the company. Literally, someone had to get promoted or pass away or leave the company. Otherwise, there was just no quick mobility. So I did what you did. I got into a management program, and then I'd look over on the other side of the aisle. I'm like, what do you do? And then they would tell me, I was like, can I sit in on a meeting? Can I help you on
Mhm.
a project? And I think the remote takes away from that because it was much easier when we were all working in the same place and on
Yeah.
the floor together. But what do you tell young leaders in today's environment? What's a great, maybe 3 things you could share with people that will help them get to that next seat aside from being curious and learning?
The first thing I tell, all the young leaders that work for me that are leading teams is the second you move from being a frontline employee into the leadership position,
Hmm.
you are now less experienced than the best person on your team. You
Correct.
now know less because you've stepped away from the work.
Right.
And you have to be humble to understand that,
Hmm.
right? And so for young leaders who are stepping away from the work, you have to accept that you know less. And so then it becomes there's telling and asking, right?
Yeah.
You lead a lot better if you ask questions as opposed to telling people to do things.
Hmm.
And so I think great leaders they're asking questions to understand. And then those questions, those answers are informing their decisions.
Yeah.
And so for young leaders, it starts out with you're no longer the best person on your team, right? Ask questions, have open ears, right? And the last thing that I would say to young leaders is make decisions, right? When I came out of the army and it was just grilled into us, right? Make a decision. The worst thing you can do is not make a decision or be indecisive, right? And when I came into the business world, I had no fear and continue. I have no fear about making a decision,
Right.
right? Hey, guess what? If you make a good decision, good things are going to happen. If you make a bad decision, you can fix it, right?
Exactly.
But if you don't make any decision, nothing happens or bad things happen, right?
Correct.
And trying to instill that in young leaders to say, hey, go out there, go make decisions.
Right.
And you know what? You're going to mess
Fail
up.
fast, right? There's a
Yep.
reason people say fail fast.
Yep. And the last thing I'll say is own it, right?
Yes.
Own it. Own your decision. If it's a good decision, own it. If it's a bad decision, own it. Own it twice.
Yeah.
And then learn from it and move on. But those are the big ones that I give the folks on my team to help,
I think that's
just help
great
them make that
advice.
transition.
Yeah. I had a team once, quite large, but a variety of levels of leadership. Some had just, gotten into management. Others were
Yep.
pretty well established. But when I would leave, if I take a vacation or I'd be gone, I'd let somebody sit in the chair. I'm like, if you want to sit here, do it for a week. They're like, oh, I can't. And for years, having people make a decision. And so there would always be something hanging when I would leave. And I would say, I'm blessing you. I trust you. Make the decision. If you don't burn down the building and you don't kill anyone, I can pretty much help you and I've got your back on anything. But if I come back and nothing has moved, that's a you issue, not a me issue. You can't wait for me because customers are still waiting on you to make decisions.
Yep. Yep.
So, but that is, and I don't know if that's just not something inherent in corporate America. It's more listen to what we tell you to do. But I do believe what you're saying, and I've seen it as well, as when you make a decision, when you're willing to test things and try new things and be innovative and not show fear, that gets you noticed in a lot more places than you think.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with the culture of the organization that you're in,
It
right?
does. It
And
does. Yeah.
what you said completely rings true with like kind of my philosophy, which is the phrase I'll use is figure it out,
Figure it out. It's
right?
okay. I'm like, We're not hurting anybody. We're not doing brain surgery. We're not curing cancer. So it's fine."
Right. And like somebody, I have a problem. Great. Great, you have a problem. Figure it out,
How do you, yeah.
right?
What's your solution? Come back when
Yep.
you have a solution and let's talk about it. Go try it
Exactly.
and then let's see what happens when it's done. And if you need to talk about it, great, but go try. It's fine.
Yeah.
And it's a muscle memory. I think that's a confidence too. You've had clearly, being part of the military, you are taught leadership. You see leadership all around you. So that probably gave you a one up in corporate America because that's one of the things we learn later. First, it's come in, learn the company, then learn your job. Then, when you're ready, we'll get you to the leadership part. And we should be doing it from the beginning by showing people what it is a leader in the organization. When you got, I'll let you pick the position. But what was your aha moment when you decided I wanted to go to the next level and you actually got to that table? Because I've had conversations with folks that said, I didn't realize the politics. There's more politicking than there is in actually doing the job. It's not about technical. It's about tenure. I mean, there's so many things that you don't know until you get to see behind the curtain. But did you have anyone personally that changed you or made you change the way you think about being at that table, or made you not want to be there? Maybe.
I think I think about when I was a process leader and I worked in home office and when you're in those types of roles and you're trying to make things better, right? All the best intentions. I want to do all these great things and you're putting together process maps and lead time ladders and all these great things, right? And you're like, okay, great, I'm going to go roll this out, across the country and we're going to make everything better for everybody, right? And you do that, and then all of a sudden you get this like less than kind of lukewarm reception, and you're
Yes.
going, no, no, this is great. I don't know what's wrong with you guys, but this is fantastic,
It's
right?
gonna work. It's gonna cure everything. We're fine.
Yep. And I had about a year of doing that type of stuff, and I had one leader, very senior person, and she and I were at odds, and very professional, right? And
Yeah.
and we just had this friction, right?
Mm.
I wanted to roll something out, it was great, and then I would get the real ground truth of, well, here's why it's not going to work, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
every time, and I say, okay, all right, let me think about this. Okay, let's fix this. And we just had this friction, and then the teams could feel it, right?
Yes.
And so then you're going, okay, now we got friction across all the teams, and like we want to
Mhm.
do this, and they don't want to do this, right? Well, when I shifted from being a home office process person to being a field leader, she was my peer.
Ah.
And all of a sudden, everything changed for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down with her, and just kind of the veil. I mean, it was intense. The veil being pulled off your eyes, you're going, oh my gosh, I was completely wrong, and I apologize.
Yeah.
And sh I have learned so much, and I'll throw in Gina Reyes, greatest woman I've ever worked with. I've learned 1,000 things from
Things
her.
from
She
her.
has
Yep.
made me a better leader. And I'll tell you, like, it was amazing. We had all this friction, and then we started working together, and I go, "Oh my god, I missed the boat." And it just completely changed my career for me in terms of how I thought about leading and being a leader in the field. And it
Mm-hmm.
was tremendous, tremendous.
But did you? I had a boss that told me it was my first time I got promoted to VP, and I wasn't expecting it. It came along, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful." And this is he's. I'm going to give you the truth. People who are your friends now, who are your peers, the minute you become a VP, they have a perception of what all the other VPs are like. I'm like, oh, but they know me. It'll be fine. It changed on a dime.
Mm,
So sometimes that title, they put you in the club, regardless if they know you or they know your skills or they like you. They go, oh, well, you're not one of us anymore. So I think there's a lot of people that have gone through what you went through.
yeah. Well, you hit on an interesting point, right? So, like, being a leader and leading teams,
Hmm.
there is that, right? Oh, they're the VP, or
Right.
they're the AVP, or
Yeah.
whoever it is, right? They're Who's that person, right? And when you if you hear that and you're the leader, then you're instantly wrong if that's what you're hearing.
Correct.
And the fastest way that you can break that barrier down is do this.
Yeah.
Sit down, like, and even better if you can do it in person, sit down around a table, break bread, have lunch, like, and get to know the people on your team.
Hmm.
And there's just no substitute for that.
No, no, because they will
And
put you in the ivory tower. They will put you
absolutely,
there. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. They will fill in the blanks about every leader that they've had up to that moment and say, that is who this person is. It's your job, like, to break those things down and be who you are, right?
right.
But the only way you can do that is, let
Talking
the
to
people
people,
know who
right?
you are, right?
And we always say that, this is a relationship business because we're dealing with people. And
Mhm.
it's the same with leadership. Yes, we have budgets we have to adhere to. Yes, we have to make revenue for the company. All of those great things that are our job. But we still work with individuals who show up to work with all kinds of different things. We don't know what people are struggling through. We don't know who their last boss was when they came in. And so that I think that personal touch right out of the gate for any leader. You don't have to have a title. There's leaders on teams. But if you're not connecting with the people that you have to work with, people are going to just make assumptions about who you are.
Yeah.
So I think it's great advice. Do you have obviously that's one person in your career, but do you have another one that you remember a pivotal point where someone said something to you that changed maybe your ideology about your job or your company or just something else that stuck with you that's maybe got you to where you are today?
I think, I go back to my Army experience, and when I was a young lieutenant, we had, just an incredible battalion commander, and everything he did was for the benefit of all of the soldiers underneath him.
Mhm.
Everything he did. And the man was incredibly selfless, and he was so focused on making sure that we were ready for combat, if that ever happened.
Mhm.
And so everything he did was pointed towards, I want us to be successful in combat. And that's like a weird thing because it's like, well, we did really hard training, right?
Right.
Really, really
We're
hard
ready.
training, right? And but you knew what the end goal was, right? And you knew
Mhm.
he was doing that for your benefit. And it created this really, really interesting culture of, we wanted to work really hard for that, right? Because we knew he was doing that for us.
Right.
And I can remember, like, and this is a wild experience, but I can remember doing training and going, well, here's the rule book and what we're supposed to do, and you should be really far away from this thing that's about to explode.
Right.
And he went, that's never going to happen in combat. You need to be right next to that and experience that, because if we're doing this live, you got to be ready to anticipate what that's going to be like.
Right.
And, you take that, that's one moment of 1,000 that we went, wow, like that's really different and it makes perfect sense.
Right.
And so this idea of, you know, doing things for the soldiers as opposed to for your personal benefit,
Mhm.
that stuck with me. And it created this environment where as a leader, as a soldier, we didn't want to let him down.
Right.
And
Right.
how powerful was that? 1,000 times more powerful than a leader that would come in and yell at you and say, do all these things, right?
Right. Get it done.
And
Figure it out.
to
Yeah.
me, yeah. So to me, it was like, wow, that is like, if I could aspire to create a culture and an environment like that as
Right.
a leader, that's what I wanted to do. And so I think that was like a really big aha moment for me. And it
Mhm.
was interesting though, because as I transitioned to the civilian world, I started to see a lot of different leadership styles. And there were, there were people who were really like emotional leaders.
Mhm.
And then there were not so great leaders who yelled at people, and that wasn't so
Right.
great. And then,
Yeah.
there's a handful of really good ones. And then, the thing that I started to see and that I really liked was this idea of leaders who were both hard
Mhm.
but fair.
Yeah. Held you accountable,
Yep.
right?
And those things weren't mutually exclusive. They could happen at the same time. And it was that idea or that type of leadership style that seemed to fit really well in the claims world.
Mhm.
We were hard and we had good standards. We held people to it, but we were fair, right?
Right.
And wow, like that became really, really powerful. And so I've seen some really incredible claims leaders that operate in that space really effectively. Um,
Mhm.
and that's like that gets me excited to see that because it's like, yep, relaxing the standard weakens the culture.
Mhm.
Um, and when you can be both hard and fair and people can expect it and they know what it is, like
Right.
you can get a hard charging organization going.
They know where the boundaries are, and I
Yeah,
think what you learned, which is a blessing, because honestly, in insurance, you'll hear a lot of people, "How'd you get in the career?" "Oh, I stumbled into it," right? Like mine, I read the Sunday paper, and it was the highest paying job out of college, and I picked
sure.
it. But we stayed here for a reason, right? So the leaders I see today are the ones that are truly invested. This is not a job, this is a career, it's part of who they are. But there are in every part of corporate America people who kind of get put into leadership. They didn't really want it, they didn't really prepare for it. And I think when you see the people yelling, they're like bullies on a playground, right?
Yep,
It's that they lack some kind of confidence in themselves as a leader, or they know they really don't have the skill set. They were kind of put in that spot and they're going to make the best of it how they know how without the skills. But what you learned, and I think is, I wish we taught it. I wish they taught it in business school, is you can set boundaries with a team and expectation goals because we're all there to do that. But when you build trust in someone, when you identify with someone that you're leading to say, hey, you textbook are the greatest technician, but this isn't what it's really like. Like if you're settling claims, hey, you're going to have to talk to plaintiff attorney. I wouldn't talk to one claims person that when they started talking to you didn't get off the phone and want to run in the bathroom and cry because they were mean and they knew exactly that they had a newbie and they were going to beat you up. Wouldn't it have been great if you had a boss like to yell at you, like, what are you doing? You're like, that's what your phone call is going to be like. I'm being tough because I care and I want you to be prepared. What a message as a leader.
yeah.
And I don't think I don't think we say that enough, but I certainly don't hear it enough from leaders that are out there today. I have a sidebar question for you,
Sure.
but we were chatting earlier. I think that in 2026, at least what I hope to do with the podcast is have people pick one thing. Pick one skill as a leader that you want to, and just work on that. Don't boil the ocean. Like you said, don't necessarily worry about what you're going to do tomorrow. Show up and be great today. But reading is hard, and that constant learning, we tend to learn from people that we work with. But if you really want to be a great leader, you have to do all the things you have to listen to podcasts and you have to read books. Do you have one leadership book that you could share with the listeners that made an impact on you and maybe why?
Yeah. So as I've moved from team to team and I try to do a lot of professional reading, and I've read a lot of leadership books. And when I was in
Hmm.
business school, we read leadership books. And I never really landed on one, um, until probably a couple years ago. And it's a book written by a Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink, and it's a book called Dichotomy of Leadership.
I
I
know
see you
that book.
smiling.
I know that book. That's a
Yeah.
great book. Yes.
And it was the second book he wrote. He wrote Extreme Ownership first. And what he said about it was, he said, I wish I wrote Dichotomy of Leadership first, because extreme ownership is a piece of that dichotomy. And so
Yes.
it's like, it's an incredible book because it breaks down all these different leadership examples
It does.
into, both a military story, but then a business application, right? And you listen to these stories about how they're dealing with leadership problems, both, in, Jocko's SEAL platoon or in businesses that he's consulting with. And you can see those connections. And it's such a great teaching book in terms of like all these different, just encapsulates real life problems that we see every single day in business.
Every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And
we
it's
tend to
just,
learn from leaders. Like that's what you do is you get in a room full of leaders and you watch and you say, oh, that's a great leader. I'm going to pull that quality.
Yep.
And then you see a bad leader and you say, I never want to do that. And he articulates it in a way that, like you said, it's just examples. You feel like you're just like looking at people instead of reading a book.
yeah, it's an incredible book. It's a great read. And it's something like, if you do it with a team and read a chapter at a time and then talk about each one of those, really powerful exercise.
I think I'm just going to drop the mic and end on that note, because what a great takeaway for leaders to do something different outside of the job to cultivate more leader. That's what we really need to do. There is an absolute pressure on leaders in the claims industry today to produce the next generations, not the next one. They're already here. But what a great thing for next year to grab your favorite book and sit down with your team. I won't call it a book club, but here are lessons that I learned from this and I want to share, because if you get them thinking about that, you're planting seeds. That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Andrew, so much for your time and for joining us today at the table.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to The Table. If you like this episode, please follow us and subscribe so that others can find us. Until next time, go out and find a seat at your table.